The moment he almost told her, the sun had just started to rise over the hills of Los Angeles, casting a warm golden light across the quiet streets. It was the kind of morning that felt like a new beginning. But for Keanu Reeves, it was the morning of his 60th birthday, and he felt like something inside him had stayed unfinished for too long. He stood on the balcony of his modest home, a steaming mug of black coffee in his hand. He wasn't one for celebrations. He never had been. The world saw him as a superstar, a hero in movies, a quiet soul who avoided the chaos of fame. But behind the calm eyes was a heart that had once come very close to love, and then quietly walked away from it. His phone buzzed gently on the table beside him. He didn't even have to check the name. It was Sandra. They hadn't acted together in years, but they had never really lost touch. Every birthday, every holiday, even random Tuesdays, Sandra always found a way to reach out, and Keanu always responded, but never with everything he wanted to say. He tapped the screen and opened her message. It was simple. It always was. Happy birthday, Keanu. I hope you're smiling today. Love, Sandy. Keanu smiled faintly and placed the phone down without replying. Not yet. He turned back to the view, but his mind was already lost in memories. It wasn't just her message that had stirred something. It was the dream he had last night. It felt so real. In the dream, he was standing in a quiet room looking at Sandra. She looked the same. Beautiful, strong, kind, and she was asking him something he had heard only once in real life. Why didn't you ever say anything? That dream had shaken him more than he expected. It pulled open the box of old emotions. He had buried deep emotions from the days they had filmed Speed, when something real was quietly building between the scenes. They were young, rising stars, learning how to trust in a world where fame swallowed truth. And still, when the cameras stopped rolling, there were little moments that meant more than words. Keanu remembered one day in particular. They were on set, exhausted, shooting a night scene. Sandra had brought him hot soup in a thermos. She didn't say anything, just handed it to him with a tired smile and sat beside him on the curb. They watched the moon together, without talking. The silence had been warm, not awkward. It felt like a moment that could have changed everything. But he had said nothing, and he had said nothing again, months later, when the movie wrapped. And again, when they met at events, talked about other people they were dating, laughed at each other's jokes, comforted each other through heartbreaks, through losses, through time. Sandra had once said in an interview that she and Keanu probably could have been great together, but the timing was never right. She said it with a smile, and the world moved on. But Keanu never forgot. It wasn't just timing, it was fear. Fear of ruining what was already perfect. Fear of crossing a line and losing the one person who had seen through everything. The fame, the money, the sadness, and still cared for the quiet man underneath. He walked back inside, coffee still warm in his hand, and sat at the piano. He rarely played anymore, but today he let his fingers wander over the keys. It was the same soft melody he had written years ago, but never finished. He used to play it when he thought of her. It had no lyrics, just emotion. It always reminded him of the quiet moments they shared. A knock on the door broke his rhythm. His assistant, Laura, stepped in. She had been with him for over a decade and knew better than to wish him a happy birthday directly. Morning, Keanu. Just wanted to remind you, Netflix is still waiting for an answer about the documentary. The one about your life. He raised an eyebrow. The one I didn't agree to? She nodded. They're offering final cut, full control. They want something deep, honest, something real. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling. Something real. After 60 years of life, maybe it was time to speak from the heart. Fine, he said. I'll do it. But only if I get to tell the story my way. That afternoon, the film crew arrived to start planning. They didn't expect him to be so calm about it, or to ask for only one thing to be shot first, A single interview. No lights, no fancy camera angles. Just Keanu, sitting by a window, talking, and when the camera rolled, he didn't talk about his movies, or his fame, or the tragedies he had endured. He talked about Sandra. He told them the story of their first day on set, how nervous he was, how she made him laugh when he messed up a line, how they took turns buying lunch for the crew without telling anyone, how she once waited in the rain because he forgot his wallet and couldn't pay for gas. She never wanted credit for anything, he said softly. But she deserved all of it. He paused. The room was silent. The crew didn't dare move. People always ask me why I never married, why I stayed single for so long. The truth is, I never really got over her. I just never told her. The director looked stunned. This wasn't just a story. This was a confession that had waited 30 years to be spoken. Keanu stood up and looked out the window, where the light had started to fade. "Maybe it's too late," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "Or maybe there's still time." That night, he finally replied to her message. "Thank you, Sandy. I've been thinking about you. Can we talk sometime?" He hit send, closed his eyes, and waited. Within minutes, the dots appeared on the screen. "Of course. I've been waiting for you to ask." And in that quiet moment, something shifted. Not everything was fixed. Not everything was said. But something real had begun. The conversation that changed everything. Keanu Reeves didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed with his eyes open, staring at the ceiling in the dark. The city outside buzzed quietly, but his thoughts were louder. He kept replaying the message in his head, her reply. Those words, "I've been waiting for you to ask." What did she mean? Had she known all along? Had she felt the same way all those years ago? The next morning, the light broke through his curtains like a soft promise. He got up before the sun, showered, dressed simply in jeans and a black shirt, and made a strong cup of coffee. He didn't want to overthink it. But that was impossible now. He stared at his phone. It buzzed. "I'm free this afternoon. Want to come over?" Same house, same tree in the backyard. He smiled. Of course. She still had the tree. He remembered that tree so clearly. It was where they used to sit during breaks when they filmed together, where they had shared silly jokes, quiet silences, and stories they never told anyone else. He typed back, "I'll be there." Keanu didn't drive his usual motorcycle. He took an old car, something less dramatic. It was a warm day in Los Angeles, but his palms felt cold on the steering wheel. As he drove through the city, memories came rushing in. Not just of her, but of all the years he had spent hiding his heart, distracting himself with work, convincing himself that some doors were meant to stay closed. When he pulled up to her house, she was already waiting outside. Sandra looked different, but in the most beautiful way. Age hadn't dulled her spark. It had deepened it. Her hair was tied back, her smile soft, and there was something calm about her presence that made everything feel safe. She didn't run up to him. She didn't make it dramatic. She just opened the gate and said, "Hi, Keanu." He nodded. "Hi, Sandy." They stood there, not speaking for a few seconds, just taking in each other. Then she pointed to the backyard. "I made tea. You still drink that weird herbal one, right?" He chuckled. "Yeah, I do." They walked to the tree. It was taller now, stronger. There was a wooden bench beneath it and a small table with 2 mugs. They sat, and for a moment they were those 2 young actors again, sitting in silence under the moon, with everything unspoken floating in the air between them. Finally, she said, "I saw the interview clip." Keanu's heart sank for a moment. "You did?" She nodded slowly. "It was everywhere. Your words, your voice, the way you said, You never told me. Keanu, why didn't you? He looked down at his hands, weathered and strong, now shaking slightly. Because I was afraid, he said. Not of you, not of love. I was afraid of losing you, of ruining something that already meant so much to me. You were the first person who made me feel seen. She looked at him, her eyes softer than ever. You were the only man who never made me feel like I had to be anything but myself, she said quietly. And yes, I knew. Not everything, but enough. I waited. And then I stopped waiting because, well, I thought maybe it wasn't meant to be. Keanu's voice was barely a whisper. Maybe it still is. A breeze passed through the tree leaves above them. Sandra looked up, then back at him. What are you saying, Keanu? He took a breath. This was the moment. There were no cameras, no crowds, no directors. Just her and him and all the years between them. I'm saying, I don't want to waste whatever time we have left wondering what might have been. I want to know. I want to see what we could still be. She didn't speak right away, but she didn't look away either. I don't need a perfect ending, she said softly. I've lived through enough to know that life doesn't give us fairy tales. But maybe, just maybe, it gives us second chances. They sat in silence. Again, but this time it was warm, hopeful. Then she stood up and said, Come on, there's something I want to show you. She led him inside her house, through the hallway, to a quiet room. She opened the door. Inside, it was filled with photos, notes, and old memories. One wall had a collage of movie posters. One corner had a dusty guitar. But what caught his eye was a framed picture of the two of them, taken during the final day of Speed. They were laughing, carefree, and close. I never took it down, she said. No matter how many places I moved, this picture came with me. He stared at it. He hadn't seen that photo in decades. It hit him harder than he expected. You know, she added, everyone always thought we dated back then. Even my mom asked about you. Keanu laughed. So did mine. They looked at each other, and for the first time, they allowed themselves to imagine a future that could begin now, not one trapped in the past. He sat down, suddenly feeling a wave of emotion. I don't want this to be just a moment, he said. I want to know who you are now, what makes you laugh now, what your favorite book is now. I want to catch up on the years we lost. She smiled gently. Then start by asking me one question. He leaned forward. What book did you read last night? And just like that, the wall between them broke. They spent hours talking, about life, about aging, about love, about pain, about the people they lost, and the ones they still carried with them. By the time the sun had set again, Keanu was back, at the tree holding the last sip of his tea. Sandra sat beside him, watching the sky turn from orange to deep blue. It's not too late, she whispered. No, Keanu said, looking at her. It's just, finally time. A dinner, a letter, and an old song. The next morning, Keanu woke up feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Light, not the kind of light that came from the sun. It was something inside him, a quiet warmth, a sense that maybe, just maybe, things could still begin at 60. He looked out the window of his home and smiled, thinking about the way Sandra had looked under the tree the day before, like she had been waiting, not just for him, but for the truth they had both hidden for decades. His phone buzzed. Dinner tonight? I'm cooking. Don't say no. He chuckled. It was so her. Direct, playful, still full of kindness. Wouldn't. Dream of it, he replied. Keanu spent the rest of the day walking through old memories. He opened boxes he hadn't touched in years, letters, photographs, scripts with notes in the margins, and even a dusty envelope with her name on it. Inside was a letter he had written, but never sent. The ink had faded, but the words were still sharp. It was written on hotel stationery from a night in Paris years ago, while he was filming. The loneliness of that night had brought her into his thoughts so strongly that he had poured his heart into the paper. Sandy, if you ever read this, know that you're the person I think of when I feel empty. Not because you fill a void, but because you remind me of what real feels like. He folded the letter again and slipped it into his coat pocket. He didn't know if he would give it to her. Maybe. Maybe not. But it felt right to carry it tonight. When he arrived at her house just before sunset, she greeted him barefoot with flour on her hands. "Don't laugh," she warned. "I tried to cook that pasta you love. The one with mushrooms and garlic and way too much parmesan." Keanu smiled. "That sounds perfect." "That sounds—" They ate in the kitchen, like two old friends who had shared 1,000 meals and 1,000 laughs. The food wasn't perfect. The sauce was a little salty. But the warmth was real, and the conversation was easy. They talked about movies they didn't take, about people they had loved, about how strange it was to become a certain age and realize the world still didn't make sense. "You know what I think?" she said, sipping her wine. "What?" "I think we were scared of being happy." He nodded. "Maybe we didn't think we deserved it." She looked at him seriously now. "Do you think we do now?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out the old letter. "What's this?" she asked. "Something I never had the courage to send." She unfolded it slowly, her fingers trembling. As she read, her face changed. Her eyes welled up. She put her hand to her heart, and for a moment, the room was silent. "Keanu, this was from Paris?" He nodded. "You wrote this, and never sent it. I was afraid you'd think I was crazy, or that it was too late." She shook her head, eyes still shining. "I would have called you that night. I was in London, not even an hour's flight." She folded the letter again, carefully, like it was something precious. "I think we've been walking around each other for 30 years with the same key in our pockets," she said softly, "and we never opened the door." Keanu looked down. His voice was quiet. "Can I ask you something? Anything. Why didn't you ever marry?" She took a deep breath. "I tried. Twice. But the truth is, they weren't you. I kept looking for pieces of you in them. Your calm, your kindness, your silence. But no one ever felt quite right." Keanu reached across the table, slowly, and I took her hand. Then maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe it was just waiting. They sat there, the candlelight flickering between them, and something unspoken passed through their eyes. Not just affection, but a shared understanding of time, loss, and what it meant to carry love for someone quietly, patiently, without ever asking for anything in return. Later, as she cleaned up the dishes and Keanu dried them, she started humming a tune. He paused. "I know that song," she grinned. "You wrote it, years ago, on set. How do you remember that?" "Because I used to hum it to myself when I missed you." His heart swelled. He didn't know whether to smile or cry. After dinner, they went back outside to the tree. The night was warm, the sky clear. Keanu looked up. "Do you remember what you told me once?" he asked. "Which thing?" "You said, if we're both single at 60, we should just run away together and grow tomatoes in Italy." She laughed. "I remember. It was a joke." "Maybe not." She turned to him, her eyes full of emotion. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious." "So what now?" she asked. "We don't run," he said. "We walk, slowly, carefully, together. We take this one step at a time." She nodded, her smile trembling. "Okay," she said. "Let's walk." And they did. Barefoot in the grass, under the stars, two souls who had waited too long but still had time. The storm they never saw coming. Keanu Reeves had never believed in fairy tales. He had lost too many people, seen too much grief. But for the first time in a long time, he started to believe in something just as rare: timing. Not perfect timing, but honest timing. The kind that arrives when two people are finally ready to see each other fully, without fear, without pretending, without walls. The days after that dinner with Sandra moved like soft waves. They started walking together in the mornings. No one noticed them. No cameras, no paparazzi. Just two old friends, talking about their knees hurting and their favorite books and silly things like, what flavor of tea was the best? He laughed more. He slept deeper. He even started writing again. One day, she gave him a notebook. On the first page, she had written, "For the words you never said. Now's the time." He filled it quickly. Memories, lyrics, letters. Some for her, some for no. One. It felt like something inside him had finally unlocked. But life, as it often does, was waiting with a twist. The news broke on a Tuesday. It started with a single blurry photo. Keanu and Sandra walking hand in hand outside a small bookstore in Venice Beach. The headline was loud and messy. Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock, Hollywood's secret love story? By the end of the day, it was everywhere. Morning shows, social media, talk shows. Fans went wild. Some cheered, others speculated. The quiet thing they had just started building was now a circus. Keanu saw the photo on a newsstand. He didn't say anything. He just turned away and drove straight to her house. She opened the door, her phone still in her hand. "You saw it?" she asked. He nodded. She sighed. "I should have known this would happen. I just wanted a little time. Just for us." "We can still have that," he said. "Can we?" Her voice was tired now, her smile thin. "You know how this works. They're going to dig into every inch of our lives. They'll twist it. They'll start saying we're doing this for some new movie, or worse, that we're faking it because we're old and lonely." He walked in and sat down. "I don't care what they say." She didn't speak right away. She just stared at the floor, her hands clenched. "But I do," she whispered. "I spent half my career trying to prove that I was more than just a face, that I wasn't some puppet for gossip. And now, they're dragging us into this. Like, we're a story they get to write." Keanu stood up slowly. "Then let's write it ourselves," he said. She looked at him. Really looked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we go on camera. Together. We tell the truth. Not for them. Not for the press. For us." She was quiet. The idea scared her, but it also gave her something else, a feeling she hadn't felt in years. Courage. "Okay," she said. "But only if it's your documentary crew." The next morning, they sat in her backyard under the same tree. No makeup, no stylists. Just 2 chairs and 1 camera. Keanu spoke first. "I was never good at telling the truth out loud, but today, I want to say this. I love this woman. I loved her before I understood what love really was. And even when we drifted, even when we didn't talk for months or years, she never left my heart." Sandra took a deep breath. "I spent a long time hiding behind timing, blaming the industry, blaming fate. But the truth is, I was scared too. Scared of ruining the one friendship that felt real. And now I just want to be honest. With him, with myself, with all of you." The crew stayed silent. They knew they were witnessing something rare. Not a performance, not a marketing move, but 2 people choosing each other, finally. But the storm didn't pass quietly. The video went viral. Millions watched it within hours. Celebrities commented. Magazines picked it apart. Some praised their honesty. Others mocked it. And then the past came knocking. A journalist released an old quote from an ex of Sandra's. It was ugly. Twisted. It suggested that she had always held a flame for Keanu, even while she was with someone else. It wasn't true. But it spread fast. Headlines exploded. Sandra's secret love for Keanu. Was it emotional cheating? Keanu the homewrecker? A quiet man with loud regrets? Sandra was devastated. Keanu rushed to her house. "Don't open the door to anyone," he said. "Don't reply. Don't explain." But she was already shaking. "This is why I stayed away," she whispered. "They don't care if they ruin everything. They just want noise." He placed his hands on her shoulders. "Then let's go somewhere quiet." "Where?" "Anywhere. Somewhere without cameras. Somewhere we can breathe." She looked into his eyes. "Italy?" He smiled. "Let's grow some tomatoes." They left that night. No announcement, no airport photos, no handlers. Just 2 bags and a map with no schedule. They found a small village in Tuscany. Quiet, beautiful, kind. They rented a stone house surrounded by olive trees. The owner, a sweet old woman named Luciana, didn't even own a TV. The first thing Sandra did was cook. The second thing Keanu did was laugh. They weren't hiding now. They were healing. Days passed. Then weeks. No press, no news. Just slow mornings, fresh food, long walks and real conversations. Keanu started playing the piano again. Sandra painted. They planted tomatoes in the backyard and named each one after characters they'd played in movies. They didn't talk about the future. Not yet. They just lived. Fully. Honestly, one evening, as the sun dipped low, Sandra turned to him. "Do you still have that notebook?" He nodded. "Read me something." And Keanu, under the soft Tuscan sky, opened to a page he hadn't planned to share. "I didn't marry her because the world was watching. I didn't marry her because I was waiting for the world to stop watching. But now I don't care who's watching, because loving her in the quiet is enough. But loving her in the open is finally what I want." She leaned into him, rested her head on his shoulder. "Then marry me in the open." He looked at her, stunned. She smiled. "Yes," she said before he could even ask. A ring without diamonds. The Tuscan morning was quiet, wrapped in soft golden light and the smell of earth. Keanu Reeves sat barefoot on the front steps of the little stone house, a warm mug of herbal tea in his hands. The air was filled with birdsong, and in the distance, Sandra's laughter echoed as she played with a neighbor's dog. Everything felt different now, but not in the flashy way Hollywood might write it. This was not a grand wedding. There was no diamond ring, no red carpet. What they had found was something rarer. Peace. But even peace has its questions. Keanu looked down at his hands. They were shaking slightly. Not from fear, at least not the Yao kind he used to feel, but from something deeper. Vulnerability. This woman, this friend who had waited through time, through silence, had said yes. Not just to a marriage, but to something more fragile. A shared future, built on old memories and new beginnings. Later that morning, they walked to the village market together. No one stared. No one whispered. The locals had accepted them like family. Luciana, the elderly woman who rented them the house, waved from her garden. "Buongiorno, innamorati," she called, which meant, "Good morning, lovebirds." Sandra laughed. "We've been caught," Keanu grinned. "We're not hiding anymore, remember?" They bought fresh tomatoes, bread, and a little jar of local honey. As they walked back, Sandra squeezed his hand. "Have you thought about it?" she asked. "About what?" "How we do this. The wedding." He was quiet. Then he said, "I don't want anything big, not even a suit, just you, maybe under the tree, maybe barefoot." She smiled. "Perfect. No diamonds?" He looked at her. "Just love." She nodded. "That's enough." They spent the afternoon sketching out small ideas in the notebook. A simple vow. A basket of wildflowers. Luciana had offered her garden. The neighbor's daughter knew how to play the violin. Everything came together without effort. But the universe, as always, had one more test. 3 days before the wedding, an unexpected guest arrived. A black car pulled up near their house. A tall man in a suit stepped out. He wasn't paparazzi. He was an old friend, Keanu's longtime business manager, Michael. Keanu opened the door, surprised. "Michael?" "I had to see you in person," Michael said. "You've been off the radar for too long." Keanu stepped outside, careful not to wake Sandra from her nap. "What's going on?" Michael hesitated. Then he handed him a tablet. On. The screen was a news article. Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. Wedding plans leaked. Exclusive photos inside. Keanu's stomach dropped. "How?" "No idea," Michael said. "But someone must have followed you. Maybe someone in the airport staff. Maybe someone sold the story. I'm sorry, it's everywhere now. Media vans are landing in Rome. By tomorrow, they'll be outside your gate." Keanu stood still. "Does she know?" "Not yet." Keanu looked toward the house. He could hear soft music playing. Sandra was inside, probably reading or making tea. He turned back to Michael. "Tell them nothing. Cancel any public events. Cancel everything." "But Keanu..." "This isn't Hollywood," Keanu said firmly. "This is our life, and I won't let them turn it into a show." Michael nodded slowly. Understood. Keanu walked back inside, finding Sandra in the kitchen. "Hey," she said with a warm smile. "What was that?" He took her hand. "Bad news. The media found us." She paused. "How bad?" "They'll be here tomorrow." She leaned back against the counter. Her face was calm, but her voice trembled. "So what do we do?" "We marry now," Keanu said. "Tonight, before they come. Quietly, under the tree." She smiled, tears forming in her eyes. "You really mean that?" "I do," he said softly. "I've waited too long already." They called Luciana. She brought flowers. The neighbor's daughter tuned her violin. The village priest, an old man with shaky hands and a kind smile, agreed to come with only an hour's notice. Just before sunset, under the same tree where so many of their moments had passed, Keanu, Reeves and Sandra Bullock stood side by side, barefoot on the grass, with the wind carrying their whispered vows into the sky. There was no script, no cameras, no makeup, just truth. Sandra spoke first. "You were always the safe place in my mind, even when the world wasn't. I don't want perfect days. I want honest ones. With you." Keanu followed. "I used to wonder what love really looked like. Now I know. It looks like a woman who brought me soup when I was tired, who waited without asking, who smiled even when she was scared, and who never stopped believing in us." The violin played softly. The priest blessed them in Italian. They exchanged simple rings, silver, thin, and made by hand from a local artist. As the last light of day faded behind the hills, they kissed. It wasn't a dramatic kiss. It wasn't a movie kiss. It was better. It was real. That night, they sat under the stars. Luciana had made a small cake, and a few neighbors gathered around, clapping gently, drinking wine, celebrating two souls who had finally stopped running from what was always there. Keanu looked at Sandra, the firelight dancing in her eyes. "Do you feel it?" he asked. "What? Home?" She leaned against him and closed her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. Finally. And in that quiet Tuscan night, the world faded away. All the headlines, all the years, all the noise. None of it mattered now. They had found something the world rarely talks about. A love that waited, and still arrived. The quiet ending they both deserved. The morning after their wedding felt like something out of time. The air in Tuscany was cool and still, with a soft breeze passing through the olive trees. Keanu Reeves opened his eyes slowly to the sight of sunlight filtering through pale linen curtains. Beside him, Sandra Bullock lay curled against his chest, breathing peacefully. No alarms, no calls, no press, just silence. The kind of silence that spoke louder than any applause. They hadn't made grand plans. There was no honeymoon flight or hotel check-in. They had everything they needed right here. Warm bread, a view of the Aya hills and each other. Even the villagers seemed to understand that something sacred had happened the night before. No one knocked, no one asked for pictures, just smiles, nods, and space. But peace is not about the absence of the world. It's about the choice to keep living softly inside it. After breakfast, they took a long walk down a dusty path that led to a quiet vineyard. Sandra held his hand, their fingers laced together naturally now, like they had always been meant to fit that way. The sky above them was wide and blue, and birds danced in the distance. "You know," she said, "I used to imagine what it would have been like if we had done this 20 years ago." He looked at her with a soft grin. "Me too. And we weren't ready." She nodded. "No, we weren't." They reached the vineyard and sat between rows of green vines. No one else was there. It felt like the world had paused just for them. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. Keanu was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I don't regret the silence. I regret the time we spent believing silence was safer than truth." She looked at him, her eyes calm. "But we still found our way." "Yeah," he whispered. "We did." Later that afternoon, back at the house, Michael called again, this time with something unexpected. "You need to see this," Michael said over the phone. "Check your email." Keanu opened the laptop on the kitchen table. Sandra leaned in beside him. There, in his inbox, was a video link titled "Hollywood Reacts to Keanu and Sandra's Surprise Wedding." He hesitated. Then he pressed play. The screen filled with clips, messages, actors, directors and old friends, some crying, some smiling, all saying the same thing. Finally. There was a clip from their speed director saying, "I always knew they were meant to be." There was a short message from an actress who had worked with Sandra on a romantic drama. "I remember Sandra talking about him on set. Not in the way people talk about a crush, in the way people talk about a safe place." And then came something that made them both go silent. A letter from a young woman, unknown, not famous, read aloud by a news anchor. It said, "Watching Keanu and Sandra find each other again gave me hope. My parents divorced when I was 5. They didn't talk for 20 years. But after seeing your story, I sent them your video. And now, they're talking again. Thank you for showing us it's never too late." Sandra placed her hand over her mouth. Keanu closed the laptop quietly. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I just didn't know. We could still matter to people like that." "You've always mattered," he said softly. "You just forgot." They spent the next few weeks quietly, letting the world spin without chasing it. The press did arrive eventually, but when they found no drama, no scandal, no story to twist, they moved on. Keanu and Sandra stayed in Tuscany. Sometimes they would take short trips, small villages, long train rides, no schedule. They never wore rings in public. They never gave interviews again. But every now and then, fans would catch a glimpse. A photo of 2 older people sitting on a bench, sharing gelato, or laughing in a tiny cafe. And always, there was something unspoken in those photos, something true. Back in Los Angeles, Keanu's documentary team released the final part of his life story. It ended not with a movie scene, or a speech, or a career highlight. It ended with him sitting under the Tuscan tree beside Sandra. The voiceover simply said, "I didn't marry her because she was famous. I didn't marry her because it would make headlines. I married her because, in the quietest part of my life, She was the one who always remained. And now, at 60, I've finally learned love doesn't knock loudly. It waits. And if you're lucky, you learn to open the door. The screen faded to black. Millions watched. Millions cried. And somewhere in a village far from Hollywood, Keanu Reeves kissed his wife on the forehead as they fell asleep under a sky full of stars. No noise. No fame, just love.